Member for Maple Ridge Mission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of the members here might be wondering with bated breath how I'm going to vote on this budget, and I'm going to take the suspense away right away, and I'm fully in support of it and will be voting for it. Before I make remarks on the budget, I'd like to acknowledge my team, which I depend on to support my constituents in both Maple Ridge and in Mission. My constituency assistant, Carly Fetishin, has been working with me for 6 years. She's expecting her second child in a couple months, and so won't be seeing her for a while. And Marc Dalton, who is in his he joined me in the second term and is now my full-time assistant. And I also, in Victoria, have just hired Rod Deacon, who used to be a reporter on Parliament Hill back in the 80s and then worked for government communications. And I can never forget my lovely wife, Marlene, who is such a strength to me and an important part of my life. It's an honor, Mr. Speaker, for me to represent the communities of Maple Ridge and Mission. They're beautiful places to live and nestled in between the Fraser Canyon, Fraser Valley, and the coastal mountains. Many lakes and recreational opportunities abound here, and they're great places to raise a family and very affordable. One of the priorities of Mission is development of Stave West recreational area. Here we find Zajac Ranch, a ranch for children with special needs and founded by Mel and Wendy Zajac, philanthropists, and have made such a difference in hundreds, probably thousands of children. If you haven't been to Mission, you need to make sure you go see the Abbey, the Mission Abbey. And it's one of the most peaceful places. I had, when I visited the school there, the boys sang me some music, a cappella music, and then some with instruments, and it was just really nice. In the Stave West area, where we're in the process of working to see a Tim Hortons Children's Foundation camp built for children who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. And there's a collaboration happening with Kwantlen First Nations. In Maple Ridge, we have the Golden Years Park, where we have Alouette Lake, and we see hundreds of thousands of visits a year. It's one of the most popular parks in British Columbia. Last year, Mr. Speaker, the Premier visited Maple Ridge for its official proclamation to be a city. It's actually 80,000 people, so it could have been a city many years ago, but it actually was incorporated in 1874, but we had the proclamation last year. It's a growing, vibrant community, and for several years running, it's been dubbed as #2 place to invest in British Columbia and #5 in all of Canada. I do want to recognize the work of the new mayors and council in both cities, Nicole Reid in Maple Ridge, and a familiar name here, Randy Hawes in Mission. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has announced his third surplus. It's quite amazing, considering the significant challenges the world is facing, and we're probably the only provincial jurisdiction to post a surplus. This hasn't happened easily. It's meant sacrifices, discipline, and restraint at all levels. I commend the 200,000 public sector employees who have reached a negotiated settlement. It's paying off economically. There's different financial lifts announced in this budget, and it's been made possible through the fiscal restraints made in the past few years. Mr. Speaker, a surplus means we're not building up debt, which means debt means increased debt servicing charges. It reduces our ability to offer services like healthcare and education. In many respects, managing the budget provincially is like managing our household budget. In order not to get snowed under with credit card debt and lines of credit, we need to live within our means, which can be a very tough thing to do, in expensive areas, especially in Metro Vancouver. The past two budgets were dissed by some esteemed members in this legislature as smoke and mirrors. Jiggery-pokery, as the MLA for Cowichan Valley is known to say. But and last year's budget was initially put at a little over $200 million. It's now projected to be $879 million. We're using that to pay down the debt, and that's important. Fiscal prudence is the reason why British Columbia has maintained its AAA credit rating, and there's not many jurisdictions in the world that have this. This fiscal prudence impacts all British Columbians and my constituents of Maple Ridge and Mission. Why? Well, for one thing, it strengthens the economic confidence and business confidence in the province and my communities. It's very important. Because when businesses feel confident, they hire people. And that's obviously jobs. And they expand and they build. If working people feel secure in their jobs, then they make purchases. They buy a home or car, furniture. And this impacts the retail sector and the construction trades. There's quite a bit of construction happening right now in Maple Ridge and to a lesser degree in Mission. And the retail sector is important for small business owners and their employees. Over 1 million people are tied in with the small business sector, whether as owners or employees. Mr. Speaker, the Conference Board of Canada reports that British Columbia will lead the country in growth this year. 3% growth is projected, and initially it was projected to be 2.6%, and that compares to a national average of 1.9%. And a strong housing market which contrasts with much of the rest of the country. Also, though the province is impacted by the price of oil, average household will see an infusion of cash of about $1,000 for the year because of the drop of prices at the pump. And that certainly will provide financial relief for millions of British Columbians. More relief for families is on the way with this budget. Effective September 1st, child support payments will be fully exempted from income assistance calculations, $32 million over the next 3 years for some of the neediest children and families in the province. I commend the member for Courtney Comax for his work on the file when he was minister. It's also been an issue that Liberal MLAs and the opposition have brought up on a number of occasions. The government has been responsive, and given that there's a bit of financial wiggle room, we made this positive change. April 1st also is when we have the BC Early Childhood Tax Benefit when it kicks in for every child under the age of 6 years old to help with childcare, whether a child chooses a local daycare or whether they use the money to help a family if there's a stay-at-home parent. This offers choice and it's fair to all families. Mr. Speaker, there's also the Training and Education Savings Grant, a one-time payment of $1,200 for every child born up January 1st, 2007 or later, and that will impact about 40,000 children a year. And when you add it with the federal contribution, it can be thousands of dollars by the time a child graduates. And it's also an encouragement for parents to put in a little bit towards their child's education, whether it's $25 or $50 a month. It really adds up at the end of the day. There's also $3 million for a new 250 children's fitness equipment credit that will be set at 50% of the amount claiming for the existing children's fitness credit. And that existing children's fitness credit, I feel very happy about that. A number of years ago, actually in my first term, I was with the caucus committee and on family, and we looked at different ways that we could help families. And I was responsible for some of the tax initiatives or recommendations, and this was the children's fitness credit was one of the things that I proposed and our committee proposed, and it's just really rewarding to see this being implemented and now being expanded towards the equipment. I'm glad that the Premier introduced the children's fitness credit 2-3 years ago. Having a healthy, active youth is key towards our future. It's been well received and again combined with the federal grant. An additional $106 million over the next 3 years to Community Living BC to support people with developmental disabilities. It's encouraging, Mr. Speaker, to see a lift here for some of our province's most needy. Mr. Speaker, I'm a public school teacher by profession before getting elected, and I was glad to see financial improvements. The 6-year negotiated settlement with teachers is fully funded. Did I say negotiated? It's not imposed. I know the strike was tough on everyone, and I know the relationship between teachers and government is still raw, but there's a healing process. And I'm looking forward to seeing this increased collaboration between teachers and education and the government working together for the good of students, which is the most important. We're now into the longest negotiated settlement in British Columbia's history. I was a teacher when the BC Liberals had reached a 5-year agreement in 2005 with the BCTF, and during that time, the next 5 years, I noticed that provincial politics and confrontation kind of faded to a large extent among the regular teachers, and that was really nice. And that's where we need to get going again, focusing on the kids. There's also the Learning Improvement Fund, which is seeing a 33% increase to $100 million a year. And that was, I remember, I believe it was last year or the year before, that there was a concern that those funds would be entirely removed. but it's there to stay, and we've actually improved on it significantly. And that will mean hundreds of more teachers and assistants to help with children with special needs. And we've actually seen a dramatic increase over the past decade with the number of children that have been designated with special needs and are receiving that funding. Can more be done? Yes, more can be done, but we're doing as much as can with the resources that we have. And just want to commend the teachers and the staff, the assistants that are doing such a great job with these children, with all children. There's $564 million over the next 3 years that are being added to education. Another positive move is the $500 education coaching tax credit for teachers and teaching assistants. Recognize the value they are to students and the extra hours they need to put in all schools. You see that the coaches we're working those extra hours, and so I think that's just it's just a step. It's a positive move just to recognize what they are doing. It's well known that involvement in sports help youth in many ways. Health, obviously, self-esteem, confidence, builds friendships, and also academic grades. $1.6 billion are going into capital investments in K-12 education. Mr. Speaker, there were some comments made by a member earlier I was listening to, and just regarding independent schools. And I had the privilege for 2.5 years to work with independent schools, visited probably about 80 different schools across the province. And I know that they're being stated to be for just the wealthy and exclusive. Well, that wasn't my experience, Mr. Speaker. They're following in every jurisdiction, every constituency, and parents, many of them, really struggle to put their children there. They sacrifice vacation, they may have one car, and they're providing these schools are providing great education, and sometimes on just a shoestring budget. Now, I will acknowledge that there are some of the more the university prep schools that charge large tuition, and yes, wealthier families do go there, but keep in mind that they only receive 35% of the funding, the base funding, that the public schools receive. So I just think that that's important not to diss the independent schools. 80,000 children are involved with or go to independent schools. They are part of our British Columbia education program. We believe in choice in education, and I think that we should support them, not pitting public against independent. It's all one system. Mr. Speaker, a significant reason that BC is weathering this economic storm that we see in other places in Canada and worldwide is our economic diversity and the diversity of our trading partners. The Premier and government ministers have worked very hard building trading relationships with Asian countries. Intentional. These have not been travel junkets. I've talked to some of the ministers here, and it's tough from morning to night, and very little breathing room, but they're working very hard, and it's paying off in spades. We've seen exponential growth in trade with China. Trade with India has seen significant increase, and we're still building that up. And we have, obviously, with our populations, our multicultural population, we have those natural connections that can help us with those relationships with the Asian markets and also other nations. It's made all the difference in the sale of our forestry products. Mr. Speaker, we have a strong strong tech sector, a strong wine industry. Last year was the first time that BC posted over $1 billion in wine sales. That's a real step. We have a strong movie sector. Maple Ridge and Mission both have movie studios, and we've seen a lot of productions. A new studio has just been announced to be built in downtown Maple Ridge. The positive side of the Canadian dollar's decline is that we can now expect many more Americans to be visiting and more Canadians probably staying at home. And I'm anticipating that we'll have a strong year in tourism and our hospitality sector, which employs so many. And we can't forget LNG. Billions have been spent by companies working towards a final investment decision. Things are still moving forward, though there have been delays due to multinational energy companies. They don't have the same liquidity. But there are 19 LNG proposals at various stages. 10 LNG proposals have received export approval by Canada's National Energy Board, and the federal government has recently made significant announcement regarding LNG tax treatment. It's a 30% capital cost allowance for equipment to liquefy natural gas and a 10% for infrastructure at the export facility level. This puts BC and Canada in a better position to see the LNG industry establish, one that could see the employment of up to 100,000 workers. And this this is a vision. You have to work towards a vision, and we are seeing this. There's quite a bit of employment, quite a bit of construction happening up north, northwest, just in the steps leading towards the final decisions, investment decisions. So revenues, though, have not been budgeted until these decisions have been made. Mr. Speaker, this is a good budget for British Columbia, and it's a good time to live in British Columbia. Thank you.